Hello, my name is Tolg and I exist, therefore I think too much. I think I skipped about 3 or 4 days in making videos. I don't know. Part of enjoying my opinion is probably getting used to the fact, will go hand in hand, more than likely, getting used to the fact that you enjoy the opinion of someone who is not entirely healthy. And while I aim to keep a schedule, and I've said this multiple times, I probably will fail eventually, like now, at it. The goal is to not. And every time I do, I'll probably feel apologetic and give one of these videos. I would have liked to, give 30 minutes of a rant. I normally free write. You just pour your thoughts out as they come. And I thought I could do that talking. Normally when I just freely talk, it's not anything that actually matters. And trying to conceive of depth while on the spot was rather difficult. I said I wouldn't speak of specificities in my life. I don't know that I will. I might. Not sure. But I have a tendency, because it was like a means of motivating myself, where I have learned patterns of not wanting to do things around other people. I think it's, what do they call that? Introversion. I don't want to fail in front of other people. I don't know if it's introversion so much as side effects to being bullied. I hate failing in front of people, and so I have a tendency to quit before I start. And so to motivate myself to do things, I would say that I'm not going to do it, and then I would feel less pressure to get it done. So I would end up doing it, and that could be introversion, that could be side effect of bullying, that could be ADHD, apparently. A bunch of people get online and say, if this happens, then it has to be this. Again, I reiterate, this is why it would be a good thing to go see a therapist if you feel at all akin to this issue where you cannot pinpoint what it is. A therapist will be able to walk you through all of the small things to be able to get you to a conclusion of an overarching issue, so a target to actually tackle. The trick is finding someone who is not half-assing their job in a day and age where everybody's struggling to pay their bills. So no issue with the profession, just issue with humanity at large, really. General distrust. I have had, I guess, okay, having given, the warning that I won't go into specificities about my life, I'm about to go into a few more. There was a year in my life, 2 years-ish, in my life, after the year of living in a women's shelter. For 2 years after that, I lived with a random family who I would then put into position of actually being a family, because 0 to 5 was around my parents, 0 to 6, and then 6 to 12 I grew up in different families' homes. And none of it was a legal structure. It wasn't foster care. It was just people saying, I can do this. It was supposed to be a community. And something, they say 0 to 6 is your subconscious, 6 to 10 creates your conscious, your nature and your nurture, what you operate as. And then 10 to 15, you're identifying yourself. My subconscious is adapting to constant environmental change. My conscious is adapting to constant environmental change in a different way. And then my identifying of myself was trying to identify stability. And so the issues that arose recently goes in line with what the lady who took us in used to say, because she had a minivan and was driving everyone around, her children and us, and anyone she happened to be babysitting or whatever it was, tutoring that day. And so we would, as children, play fight, be very rambunctious, and she would eventually, have to tell us how to behave, which was tricky because you're dealing with other people's children as well. So the thing that she taught us was sit on your hands. Everybody sit on your hands. And I need to take that into adulthood with me, because 10 to 15 identifying self was struggling to make others happy with me. And then 15 to 25, I didn't exist. I was just putting one foot in front of the other and moving into the next day, whatever it had for me. And I currently am stuck in war. The slightest pin drop, the slightest notation that someone's emotions could mean that I am put out, I retaliate. And that has been a large majority of the issues at hand. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it's a survival mechanism a lot of people have learned, especially in the trauma being dealt currently in this nation, U.S., currently and for a very long time. I guess that's a rant to be had. I have a friend who talks about the recent vote at the UN, if the UN is a place, where multiple nations got together and they were trying to vote on the greatest human atrocity that has ever happened, to which the majority voted that yes, it was the transatlantic slave trade. Which did stretch a good amount of years and has lasting effects to this day. And trauma is genetically handed down and also generationally taught. So there is no argument that it is an atrocity, absolutely. But I find myself always reeling back. And I've been struggling internally, with the idea about currently in the US, it is wrong to be of white culture, which is fine, to conclude that the pendulum swings both ways. So if you constantly, for at least 100, probably more years, tell people that it's wrong to be a color, a creed, eventually the tide turns, the pendulum swings the other way, and what they have been taught, they deal back. It's wrong to be you, obviously, because you were the person that hurt me. And having been bullied, to scale it down to a very minuscule and understandable level for me, I absolutely want to hold people accountable for hurting me. And sometimes I won't necessarily immediately run into them, but there will be minor interactions with people who did bully me in the past. And the few times it does happen, it's weird to want to hold someone accountable who has not grown, who has not healed, who is still a child. And so this ideation of misunderstanding culture as race, this white culture versus another culture, whichever culture, I feel is hindering the growth of someone who has been traumatized by perpetually creating a torture of something that doesn't hold that much power, not as much as it used to. And most in ideology, it's really hard when you're going through trauma, when you're being abused, to disassociate, to enter into a place in which you understand the person giving that trauma and that abuse doesn't deserve to give you that. And it is far easier to put them into a position of power and assume that that is why you suffer than to realize that the reason in which you suffer is someone else's weakness. Because you want to be able to hold them accountable, and if they are weak and limited, how can you hold someone accountable when they only result in being stupid and stunted? In all of my abuses and all of my abusers, it has taken a lot to step back and try to get to a point of separation. Is this worth my time? Do I want to sit down and show you love and try to teach you a better way of being? Is it worth my person to do so? And this is how I can try to understand the perpetual suffering of anybody of color origin. It's a very limited way, but I mean, it's what I got. And so when it comes back to understanding human atrocities, there's 10,000 to 1,000,000 years of history that was not written down. And as far as human atrocities is concerned, the world is riddled with them. From small scale to grand scale. Currently, there are 3 genocides happening that I know of. Uyghur populace in China. The intended expulsion of Palestinian peoples from their land, and the purposed slave trade of the, I can't remember the name right now, but I know the place. Northern Africa, essentially just 3 different countries all together. And then as far as genocides historically, worldwide, and you have in the US, if you wanted to measure out suffering. In chronological, the indigenous were the first to be raped and tortured and put into camps and confined, and they still suffer to this day. But I think in everybody understanding mental health issues, we all got to a point, I would have assumed, where you don't weigh someone's suffering against someone else's suffering because it's a subjective scale. In my life, my bullying may hit on a 0 to 10, 0 meaning that it didn't affect me at all, and 10 meaning it affected me greatly and I am suffering shell shock from it. This bullying may hit on a 7 where someone else going through what they went through, if they were to go through that bullying, it may hit on a 3. Suffering is subjective. Pain is subjective. It's subjectively understood. It's perceived differently based on the experiences, the understanding, the nature and the nurture, and the society and how it understands as well what happened. And I think a good point to come to isn't trying to weigh out who was hurt most, because there are many groups in the US just alone that were fucked up and fucked over. A lot. And lasting effects on any end. You have Asian American peoples to this day trying to fit themselves into an understood way of being. Which can be applied or taken away based on the community/society that they're surrounded by. Oftentimes very difficult for the individual to own it themselves. Much like you have communities in the US, and then, handed down generational trauma of being put into camps themselves, being forced off of living in environments out of their homes, forced into underpaid labor or lack of pay labor, laying down train lines. What are they called? Railroads. Why couldn't I remember that? And the what is the other word that people say give us not our repercussions, but pay us essentially for our suffering, so that we can feel like the suffering stopped. I can't remember the word. I was told that these Chinatowns were a means of payment, that you can have your confined community and we won't fuck with it on any basis. I can't remember the word. And I keep posing, if you did get this word that I can't remember, no one would be able to agree on it, how that looks. Because if for the Black community in the US, it's extensive, its roots are extensive and highly differentiated. You have first generational, second generational, and multi-generational in the US. So who gets to participate? Because everybody's still suffering. The side effects, the lasting effects of segregation, the understanding handed down generationally in some families that, like my grandma in my dad's side, my mom was telling me that when she was married to my dad, they went down south, and it was still expected at that time, I think it was in Tennessee, and it would have been during the 90s, that anybody who was on the sidewalk and white, if they were walking towards someone who was Black or colored at all, anything other than white, the individual who had more melanin in their skin, to put it very bluntly and correctly, would have to step off the sidewalk and let the others walk by. And then, fucking 30 years pass and I visit my dad for the first time down in Tennessee. And I'm trying to make the cashier smile. And I'm asking her, oh, you're watching the clock. What time is it? Getting off work soon. Just banter. And I got a giggle. And that's always a goal of mine, to, make someone who hates their job smile. It makes me happy. To which these bitter old women behind us said, oh, she must not know Jim Crow. And the cashier just shut up, clammed up, and pursed her body to protect herself. It was disturbing. So I know that there are lasting effects, and I know even if you were first generational, someone who was black, you would still be suffering these lasting effects. So do they get to be a part of the payment? To what extent? Would someone who was born from a family descendant from slavery get paid more or get paid less? Does everybody get paid the same? And how does money make amends for trauma? There was a case in Omaha, Zachary Bare Heels. And I do my damnedest. I don't remember names, but I do my damnedest to remember his. I wasn't there for it. Don't know the family. Don't know why I care so much, but I do know that I care a fuck ton. I thought it was absurd. If it helped the family, so fucking be it. But this teenager, I don't even think he was a grown man. He was a teenager, and he had his ponytail. Walked into a gas station. Wasn't doing anything illegal. Wasn't put under arrest. The police dragged him out of the gas station by his ponytail. And he was found beaten and tased to death. Having been held by the police officers and strapped to a chair. The family would march for years afterwards. The indigenous community here tried, to march for years afterwards to be recognized for their child being lost to them. And eventually there were billboards reminding people that he existed, and the city paid them money. In today's day and age, if you're thinking of having a child, for about the length of time it takes to raise them from 0 to teenage, you'll put down at least $1 million, I think I read somewhere, to take care of them. What is a life worth? What is trauma worth? What is the value of suffering generationally, year after year after year, of learning incredible fear, of putting this power in someone else's field and not being able to walk away and realize the other party is a stunted individual, building them up to be this horrific individual, forever afraid of what can happen to you. How is, and I don't mean to say no one deserves anything. I mean to say this isn't going to solve the fucking issue. It'd be nice, to have a payout. Absolutely, it'd be nice to get acreage, for sure. And the issue with anything that the government gives you is that the house always wins. An immediate payout, they can walk away and not give you your rights. An immediate payout, they can walk away and still keep up redlining and Jim Crow. An immediate payout, and they can still move in the direction of saying you need to have an IQ to vote. Deny scholarships. Land rights, and they still make you pay taxes on them. Just like the indigenous community, they still don't give you the right to mine, the right to actually do with your land what you want. To build on it, you need to buy the air rights as well. To build businesses on it, you need to file with the government more taxes. And you need to get enough money on your end to be able to build. So most indigenous communities themselves sit on land and are in debt, generational debt. So this fight of give the land back, give rights back. Give rights that people generations haven't had. Recognize that Christianity is not the only religion, for one. That majority of any colored individual in the U.S. probably participates or has participated in or knows people that participate in ancestral worship, different religions, and have the right to do so. Give rights, give consideration, teach meaning and independence, and give proper education without mockery, without fear of societal repercussions. What is money worth? What is the value of any specific situation? And all of this born from me saying, initially, learn to sit on my hands because I retaliate out of fear. There are theories that what is happening is bread and circus. Everything is boiled down to entertainment to make you not pay attention to how humanity could move to stand up for themselves. If I'm stuck in fear, if every single time someone has an emotional response, I retaliate angrily, I'm not gonna be able to move, one, in a healthy way, two, in a way in which I can make better decisions for my life. I'm stuck fighting, and I've been fighting for years, and I haven't lived. There's this book, and I don't have it on the bookshelf. I think it's packed away. I think it's packed away. Because I put the ones on the bookshelf that I felt like it would be all right for me to read aloud. That no one would say you don't have the right to speak on that because you don't have that experience. It's the name of it is What the Fires Left Behind. The reason I was looking for the book is because I can't remember right now who wrote it. But it discusses a man taking care of his daughter in the U.S. in modern day, suffering the repercussions of how Black individuals are treated in society, and how he just wants to live and live peacefully, and the societal expectations put on a Black man. When I get pressed for don't you feel, it always feels like I don't have any right to have an opinion. I think through how I feel, and I think through my opinions, and I think they're okay opinions. But because I'm afraid, and because I'm so mentally ill, and because I'm highly defensive, because I'm stuck living in fear, And then these societal issues put people in a position where everyone needs recognition, because first comes recognition, then comes consideration. I feel like I'm doing my damnedest to be considerate, but it will never be good enough. Like, I'll perpetually be graded along with, on a bell curve, with the worst of my peers. With people who are stuck in fear, stunted in growth, feeling like theirs will be taken from them, whatever they perceive as theirs, their right, their ownership. This ideation that white individuals are dwindling in numbers, and that's somehow important enough to vote towards, make programs for. It's weird to put that much effort into a skin color. Your race is not your culture. Your skin color doesn't define you. It was a means of the stupid to color organize, so they didn't have to keep track. You hear stories of families, mostly down south, who own hotel lines and restaurant lines, and they'll go to eat in fancy places, and because their skin color is different, they get treated like they're the help, or it wasn't put into that words, that's why the quotations, or just that they don't belong there. It's the means of the stupid to color categorize because they can't fathom anything beyond aesthetic, and that's what this whole country is currently running on. Aesthetic appreciation, superficial appreciation over the depth of a character. So, readdressing world atrocities, there are so many. And how do you weigh pain against pain? What happened is horrific. It is a human atrocity. What I ended up saying is, can it be considered worse than the constant rape and pillage of the entire continent of Africa? Because that's still happening to this day. Congo, that was the one I couldn't remember. The Congolese. And this isn't me saying I know shit about anything. This is me saying I'm doing my fucking best to know more. Because going back into, 0 to 6, 6 to 10, 10 to 15, 10 to 15, trying to identify myself over, you have flee, fight, and fawn. I fawn to stay safe. So 10 to 15, trying to be perfect by other people's standards, and then 15 to 25, not existing. not having any growth in identity. And then 25, actually, what year was it that happened? Let's see, it was about 23 to 30. Someone did something to push me out of my mind, and I did something to staple that effect into place. And so for 7 years, I don't necessarily have full memory of what happened. And now I am maybe 32 or 33, I don't know. Trying to make sense of myself, trying to make sense of others, trying to get over myself, and then trying to be perfect by other people's standards so that they don't hold me to the worst of my peers on a bell curve. On that note, on a story, there was a period in high school, there's a whole period in my life, I'm not a good person, but there was a teacher that was bitter and mean and said the worst fucking shit. Not only was it a subject that I'm not good at, chemistry, but maybe I could have been better. He used to stand in front of the class and say, I used to be a college teacher, and you guys are such a disappointment in consideration of when women were clinking to stir against the beaker. He would say, well, it's clear none of you have been in the kitchen. We got a transfer student who was, I believe, from Korea, and he would point at him and say, they're coming over here, trading their wagons and donkeys for cars and stealing your jobs or something like that. And at the point, my means of having a relationship with my sister was K-pop and K-dramas. I was in middle school. I found TVXQ or DBSK and introduced her to that. And so that was our shared understanding and how we showed love to each other. And I don't know therein if, I took offense to it because I loved K-pop or because of my understanding of another country, leading me to the understanding that this man is delusional and violent because of the delusions that he wants to pay into. I think in one class I told him that the reason his wife and daughter don't talk to him is because he's a bitter old man who hates the sun. And at that point, we started a fight back and forth. He told me that the only way in which I would ever become anything is if I essentially sold myself. At parent-teacher conference, he said those earrings the gold earrings I was wearing aren't going to get you anywhere unless you make people buy you, or something along those lines. And at parent-teacher conference, he looked at my mom and verbatim said, I hold the pen and the paper. Your daughter started a fight with me and I will end it. And my mom said, is there anything she can do to raise her grade? And he said, no, I am going to fail her. So she went to the principal, and the principal was getting fired at the time. It was a huge mess. And he said, my hands are out. I can't do anything. I have no power in this situation. So I went back to class after that, and he started grading people on a bell curve. And he would have us continue. From that point on, he said we were going to work in groups, and we would choose our partners, our friends. No matter what I was going to do, he was going to fail me. So my friends were going to be failed because of the bell curve per the individual group. So I decided not to go to class. And I just went to, they're called administrators, where there were like 4 administrators for our high school, and each administrator had a section, subgroup of kids. I don't know how it was divided, whether it be by last name or whatever, that they send notes to, give admonishments to, whatever it is. So I went to my administrator and I said, I'm skipping class. I'm not going to go back, but I can't go and skip downtown because it's winter. Can I do something for you? Can I hand out notes? And he said, yeah, sure, that's fine. Eventually I handed a note to that class at that time, and it was SATs, and he said, look, that's what you don't want to become. Dooming me to failure. I say this story because when I noticed that other people were going to be graded horribly by my actions, I chose to take myself out of the picture. And you have current day white apologists who will do anything to not feel the pain of repercussion of prior generations' actions. And I don't think it's healthy to deny the fact that I exist. And I don't think on the receiving end, it's healthy for someone else's growth to deny the fact that I exist. I can be as sorry as I want to be that anything has ever happened, ever. But I can only control my own actions. And I don't want to be put into the position being told I shouldn't exist, much like I never wanted anybody else to be put into the position of being told they shouldn't exist. And I'm tired of reacting. And I would assume the nation at this point has got to be tired of reacting. You see in Gen Z that they don't want to emote publicly. Like, that's not repercussion, a huge generational repercussion of being overwhelmed, of everything being bread and circus, of all of this constant division and derision. I don't know. In my own personal life and externally, I have no idea what the fucking next move looks like. But I sure as shit don't want repetition of what the fuck has been. And, you know that one girl in Mean Girls? I just want everybody to eat cake. She doesn't even go to this school. Yeah. And I'm sorry to oversimplify issues. I don't intend to step on feet on either side. I just don't fucking have answers. Good night. I'll get back to reading here soon. Bye-bye.